Chapter 10, Embodiment. I am the voice of one, the only one, crying in the wilderness of human understanding and imagination. Prepare ye the way of the Lord, the law. The voice, the urge within seeking to be born, the constant knocking at the door, the cry of the desire locked within the flimsy yet so strong walls of the human thinking. Let me in, and I will break the bread, the substance of life, with you. I will sup with you. Let me have a body and embodiment, a means of expression. Out of the infinite fields of imagination, where reel after reel of daydreams unfulfilled unroll themselves, out of the clouds of human belief of the heaven and the skies and the unfulfilled desires, must John, the Revelator, see the new heaven and the new earth descend into reality. Nice one. He must see the Word made flesh. It must be embodied in a state that is recognizable and real. He must embody the Word, or rather, let the Word be embodied. Without its embodiment, electricity would still be known only by the undisciplined and intermittent streak of lightning, yet the same substance properly embodied manifests itself in 1,000 glorious ways, facilitating, aiding, and abetting the efforts of mankind. Yet, unembodied, it remains only a terrific, uncontrollable force which heathens, both civilized and uncivilized, fear as the power of a wrathful God. The fear of the tribal god in the jungle expressing his displeasure, sending his hatred through a bolt of lightning, is only matched with the civilized accounting for much evil as an act of God. All illustrations are inadequate to give any idea of the power of God through his instrumentation or embodiment, man. But by these clumsy tools we are able to see a little beyond the limitation of the dead letter, into the living spirit of the fatherhood quality of God, which overshadows the receptive consciousness and makes it possible for the embodiment of the Word. Mary, symbolically speaking, was overshadowed by the fatherhood or creative consciousness and embodied the Word, gave it a body. I have gotten a man manifestation from the Lord. In other words, the recognition of the spirit of the fatherhood degree descending into the flesh and making the Word flesh causes the manifestation to come forth. Mary magnified the Lord within her. Already she conceived that without a body or an embodiment, it would be nothing, and so she set about recognizing the Lord within her as embodying itself in proper manner, so that it could come forth as something more than a talked of theory, just as Franklin, testing the electricity in the air, finally brought it out and started the great embodiment of it in a million different ways. This process of embodiment is not so new or remote a process, neither is it as symbolical as one would think at the first glance. The trouble with most truth study is that the student sets about it with the thought, now this is something strange, wonderful and different, and naturally very difficult and impossible to express, instead of looking about and getting a comprehensive idea of just how much of what he is seeking in some far country is actually close at hand. Am I not a God at hand and not afar off? You answer that. It is a very common practice to say that so-and-so is a doctor, a musician, a dancer, etc. In varying degrees, we classify doctors, financiers, dancers as good, medium, bad, or geniuses. In doing this, we do not limit their ability to the physical, since the genius may be badly lacking in physical equipment. A great musician may be undersized and a cripple. A great financier may be old and physically infirm. It is not the body that we look to, but the something that is animating the body. And in this degree, however poorly or limited, we must recognize that the financier is nothing but the embodiment of an invisible quality, an ability to amass or make money. Take this quality away from him and the body can do nothing. It is as helpless as that of a great dancer who has dissociated himself from the idea that he can dance. No matter how perfect the body may be, without the something within, it is merely inert matter. The I can of myself do nothing of Jesus shows the helplessness of the human mind trying to accomplish something and finding itself hedged in by the heavy confines of unenlightened matter. Until it sees that the financier is not a body, but the power which embodies itself in man, he can never earn more than a bare living by the sweat of his brow. The more he looks to the limitations of his I can of myself do nothing consciousness, the more impossible it is to see how he can feed 5,000 in the desert. It is a human impossibility. Jesus, the carpenter, would have had to work his entire lifetime to have given a banquet to 5,000 hungry men. All this brings us up sharply to the fact that it is no good to work with the limitations of the consciousness, which admits its total inability to accomplish anything. It is the pouring of new wine in old bottles and the sewing of the new patch in the old garment. Until it is clearly seen that the false human method of going against the instructions of Jesus and trying to make the human thing do something that it admits in the beginning it cannot do, there will be little possibility of accomplishing the greater works than these shall ye do. Judging from appearances, one can get only the results of the consciousness which says, I can of myself do nothing. What a flimsy basis upon which to found anything. Time after time, man has attempted to force the issue and make the consciousness, which has admitted, I can of my own self do nothing, do something. The struggle has been carried on by willpower or false religious stimulus, with only a momentary flutter of success. When you take your attention away from the body, the place of manifestation, and turn it unto the power, you will begin to understand why Jesus insisted that it was necessary to be absent from the body and present with the power. The dancer who is constantly contemplating the movement of his feet, and the musician who is constantly watching his fingers, will not become great and will never embody the true abandon of the power that is necessary to produce the perfection of the thing he has in hand. The more the musician's fingers are watched, the more laboured they become. Intricate passages that must go quicker than the thought become impossible of attainment, because he sees the limitations of the vehicle. Love that sound. What unknowing person who, by regarding the locomotive which weighs tons, could imagine it flying down the steel rails at a speed of 60 miles per hour? It is not possible to figure it out, because it does not come within the possibility of the human mind. It is impossible to see how you can make your embodiment do a thing that it has formally accepted as utterly impossible. Your human mind, so schooled in years of poverty and limitations, has its subconscious rut of thinking to look to. Thinking in terms of poverty has become such a habit, and it is automatic. There is no hope of eliminating that subconscious rut. It is too deep, too real. It is true that the escape is minimized. There is little hope, in fact none, through the human limitations, but when you take your attention off the thing and place it on the power, the mechanics of the working out of the thing take care of themselves. Hence, the inert body lying asleep suddenly jumps into the dance and flies gloriously and graciously through space into a mad, joyous expression of the dance. How can it be done? All limitations are flung to the wind because it has become the embodiment of the power and has designated itself as a dancer. Whom do you say that I am? What do you say about your I am? That is all I can be to you. If you measure me eternally by the limitations of John Smith, you can get nothing into manifestation until you come to the recognition that Jesus had. I can of myself do nothing. And stop trying to make this body do something. You will not be absent from the body and present with the law, and hence you will continue to try to make God do your bidding. It is amazing how many people are trying to make God do something, as if you can change the course of the winds by your wishing. The wind bloweth where it listeth. No man can say, whither goest thou? So the financier is embodied in a certain person and the school teacher in another. And you say, Mr. Blank is a financier. Yet his body is not nearly so strong and fine as mine, and his education is limited, and his birth and breeding, and so and so. But with all your observations, you cannot make yourself a financier. You may go to him and ask him to assist you, and perhaps he will, and perhaps he will not. Awake thou that sleepest, and Christ shall give thee light. I did not say perhaps he would give you light. I said, Christ shall give thee light, and in this light you shall see that this working with the power afar off, or looking to the body for assistance, instead of letting the power embody itself in you, is false and a man-made theory. A lady, upon entering a swimming class recently, had to pass a physical exam. During the examination, the examiner stopped suddenly and said, "You are physically unfit. You had better see a physician at once. Do you know the condition you are in?" The rejected applicant was startled, naturally, at the sudden and unexpected revelation. She went back to the dressing room, 1,001 fears turning over in her mind. The words of the examiner sounding like an executioner's verdict in her ears. There is a physician at the end of the street. He is pretty good. But there is Dr. Blank 2 miles away. He is excellent. Shall I call him? The thoughts chased themselves back and forth in her mind as she started to dress. Suddenly, the light came. She was embodying the power in another. The man at the end of the street was a physician of a certain degree. And then 2 miles away was another degree of the same thing called a physician. And finally, as she toyed with the idea, it came through. Am I a God afar off and not at hand? The great physician was right at hand, waiting to have the door opened unto him to come in and embody himself within her. Immediately the presence of the physician was felt, searching the joints. The physician was close at hand, and there was no guesswork or questioning as to causes. The automatic power of the Word being made flesh, searching the joints and marrow, had no need of finding a physical cause. She was the embodiment of the physician. And in a twinkling of an eye, she arose and went back to the examiner and said, "Please just examine me again before I dress." The examiner, in amazement, found her perfectly qualified to pass the test. Jesus made himself as God. That is, he partook of the divine nature. And one instant he embodied it as the healer of diseases, and the next as the supplier of food, next as the speaker of the word, and then as the way shower. I am with you all ways, in every way and always. I am that I am. Call upon me and I will answer you in the language you can best understand. Give me a body. Let me be embodied in you, not in some other. Look unto me, the I am, and let that be your point of contact with the universal whole. And you will know that one with God is a majority, and that it is possible now to understand what takes place in the body of mankind when he takes his attention away from the body and is present with the Lord. Whom do you say that I am? I say that you are the Christ, which is everything to everybody and is eternally knocking at the door of your consciousness, awaiting the opening, so that it may come into expression here and now, so that it may have an embodiment and come out of the place of imagination. Closer is he than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. And since you see this power embodied in some other, you have come past the point of doubt. However imperfectly this may be seen, yet you do admit that certain people embody certain powers. When you see that you must stop denying me and start calling upon me, it will be when the human will has subsided and the will of God is being done and brought into fulfillment. The Word made flesh, yet in my flesh shall I see God. How can you see God if you will not recognize the presence of the power within and give it an embodiment or let it into expression? Do you begin to see that unless electricity has an embodiment, it eternally remains a static power overbrooding the world, urging and seeking a point of expression? So is the Father consciousness overshadowing the world and is waiting for a point of expression, a place wherein to embody itself. Call upon me and I will answer you. The calling upon the me is from the point of willingness, letting the divine overshadowing take place and following the urge of spirit and not the dead letter of John Smith. The seeking to demonstrate money falls by the way when the power within you becomes the financier embodied. Then all greed and desire to make a show of prosperity will subside and fall into the sea of oblivion. The embodiment of the financier within will solve, in a moment, knotty problems that you have not been able to demonstrate over for years. Come close unto me, commune with me, and let me in, and I will break the bread of life with you, and you with me. The day is at hand, the day of manifestation. John, the love consciousness, reveals to you the new heaven and the new earth descending out of the clouds of human belief, the Word being made flesh, the speak the word state of mind which releases itself into manifestation. Give me a body. Do not be afraid to be still and commune with me. Mary was silent and magnified the Lord within her. She contemplated the power and allowed it to embody itself in her and bring the Messiah into the world. So shall you begin to drop off the old seeking of things and get back into the power of the presence, here and now. Whom do you say that I am? Be careful what you call me, for that I will appear unto you. Through your limited human mind, you have distorted me and tried to drive me into expression according to your beliefs. Now then, stand aside and recognize me as embodied in you in the name and nature of that which you seek and behold. That which you tell me in secret shall be called from the housetops. It is wonderful.